it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Jimmy Murphy and Pierre McGuire here. And Pierre, we're going to talk some Edmonton Oilers today with the one and only Mark Spector of Sportsnet. He's based in Edmonton, has covered the Oilers and also the Flames over his days as a journalist as well. Maybe we'll get into that a bit as well. But a big game tonight, obviously, the Edmonton Oilers trying to tie the record, going for 17 straight wins, which would tie the 1992-93 Pittsburgh Penguins pair that I'm sure you're familiar with. What's your take on how the Oilers have done this?
Well, first of all, I think they deserve a lot of credit at the management level. Jeff Jackson and Kenny Holland, they realized it wasn't working with Coach Woodcroft there. So they make a coaching decision. They bring in Chris Knobloch. They elevate Paul Coffey from a manager position to a coaching position. It makes a huge difference for Darnell Nurse on the back end. It makes a huge difference for Evan Bouchard. And it makes a massive difference for Matthias Ekholm. So their defense gets better, number one. Number two, Chris Knobloch has this amazing relationship with Connor McDavid from their time with the Erie Otters. So there's a level of trust that's built up between those two. And if your best player trusts the new coach, Jimmy, it makes it a lot easier to sell the message to the rest of the team. So Draisaitl is obviously paying attention. Nugent Hopkins is paying attention. Zach Hyman's paying attention. You know, you go down the line, they're all paying attention because Connor McDavid's paying attention.
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden, confidence is a scary thing when you got a group of players like that, and they're obviously a really confident team.
Well, obviously, they're going into Vegas tonight to take on the Golden Knights, and that's where Mark will join us from in a bit here. But, Pierre, this has become a rivalry over the past few years. They're starting to really kind of build it up. They've had some meetings in the playoffs. That always helps. I'm sure on the other flip side of this game tonight, the Vegas Golden Knights would love to be the ones to snap this streak.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they would. I mean, you know that Bruce Cassidy's telling them, we're in this to win it, boys. And we want to get on a bit of a roll here, too, because we don't want them sneaking up on us.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you look at it, there's a lot to be done there for Vegas, obviously, for Edmonton. I think Vancouver's probably doing handstands saying, yeah, Vegas beat them up, you know.
Yep.
So my biggest thing coming through all this after the All-Star break, Jimmy, is who's going to make the next move to try to keep up to Vancouver? Who's going to make the next move to try to keep up with Winnipeg? Because I truly believe, and we talked about this weeks ago, it's not like we're just talking about it now. I truly believe whomever makes the best trade going into the deadline or at the deadline will give themselves the best chance to win in this NHL that's so full of parity right now. There's no super elite team. They're all a lot of equal teams.
You're right. And right now, I think would agree that team that has done that so far is the Vancouver Canucks.
100%.
With them picking up Elias Lindholm. But you mentioned something there about the standings there, Pierre. And, you know, who would have thought a couple months ago that we'd be looking right now at the Edmonton Oilers sitting in the third slot in the Pacific Division, trailing the Vegas Golden Knights by 5 points. They're likely not going to catch the Vancouver Canucks. They'd have to reel off another 17 in a row, I think, to do that. They're at 71 points, but Vegas is sitting there at 64 in second, Edmonton at 59 points. All of a sudden, I mean, if you look at it, I know that Edmonton's only 3 points ahead of LA, who's in the first wild card spot, and 5 points ahead of St. Louis and Nashville, tied for the last wild card spot. But when you look at it, if they win this game right now, they're 3 back. I think for the rest of the season, we could safely say that this would likely become a battle of jockeying for home advantage in the first round. Would you agree?
Yes, and I think that's really well said by you. I completely agree, Jimmy. You nailed it. Home ice is going to matter. I know a lot of older hockey people say home ice doesn't matter anymore because we have all these cookie cutter rinks. I would cede them. I'm part of that argument. But crowd noise matters.
Yep.
And if you have a young goalie who hasn't proven anything in the playoffs yet, and Stuart Skinner hasn't proven anything in the playoffs yet for the Edmonton Oilers, you know, Thatcher Demko's got a way more proven track record than, you know, Stuart Skinner. Casey DeSmith has a better proven record. Aiden Hill's won a Stanley Cup. So I think home ice does matter for some teams. And, you know, the one thing about Edmonton, and Mark Spector will be able to tell you about it, I've been there so much over the course of my life, it's a rabid hockey city, and those fans are they're a lot like Buffalo fans, Jimmy. I got to be honest. There's not a lot of corporate tickets there. These are people that pay their own money to go to games, and they're passionate about their team. And I think the Oilers understand that, and they utilize home ice extremely well.
Well, I just think back, and I know it was a different arena, and it was definitely louder when it was packed, the Northlands Coliseum. I get it. But I just look at it, any Canadian team has a home advantage just because of the market and what hockey means in each of those cities. And, we've got plenty of Canadian teams that could make the playoffs this year. It's great. 4 out of the 6 are looking at it, looking like they could do it this year. So I just think you add that whole element to it, and man, you've got a hell of a home advantage. And Pierre, you were there. Again, I'm not comparing the two buildings. I get it. There's a difference. But you were there in 2006 when they played the Carolina Hurricanes. And I just know watching from afar on the TV and trying to hear you speak in between the benches. I remember it.
Yeah.
That place was rocking. And I'm sure the same will be said at the new arena as well.
I can tell you this. I've done 16 finals, not counting the ones I did at TSN, but 16 for NBC. And the loudest interview I had was just before Edmonton, Carolina, interviewing Christopher Pronger before the Oilers, first home game in Northland. And I said to him, thanks for doing this. He goes, no, it's my pleasure. It's always a big game when you and Doc Emmerich and John Davidson are here. I said, oh, thank you. And then I said, you're going to have to talk louder because I can't hear you, man. So you think about all the different finals I've had a chance to do, whether it was in Anaheim or, all the different arenas, Chicago, Tampa, all these different places. Without a doubt, I'm telling you right now, that was the loudest.
There you go.
Edmonton was the loudest. Now, it was Northlands. It was a little different. The roof was a little lower, but still, it was crazy loud.
And Vegas can get loud as well. So our man right now, Mark Spector, is in Vegas. He will be at that game. What are they calling that place now? What's the nickname? The Castle Spec? Is that what they call it? Or the Lair? What? How do they?
I don't know. T-Mobile Arena is the official name. So why don't we start with that?
We'll just start with that. How you doing, Spec?
Doing great, boys. Nice to see you.
Good to see
Good
you.
to see you, Mark. Really nice to see you.
How's Vegas?
Vegas is good. It's kind of funny. I just walked back from the rink and I saw more people wearing Oilers logos on the strip than I did see people wearing 49er or Chiefs logos. So I'm sure that's going to change as the week goes on. But there's a good contingent of Edmonton people who came down to watch this game tonight.
Hey, speaking of, our production crew is actually at Radio Row. So they're managing the show. They're in Vegas in the same area as you. And one thing I heard people talking about that are out there right now, Spec, is that because of all that media in there for the Super Bowl, there were way more, requests to the Vegas Golden Knights for credentials for this game than usual. And you're just going to get a lot of, mainstream media that doesn't necessarily cover hockey is going to be in there. So this game is just going to have a playoff feel to it, not only because of the game on the ice, but also the media contingent as well.
Yeah, there was, this has become this Oilers team got beat in here by Vegas last year. They played a 6-game series with the Golden Knights, and the Oilers held the lead in every game and lost in 6. And part of the reason was when you come to this arena here in Vegas, I'm not sure there's a rink in the league that can provide a momentum swing. Like when things start going sideways for the visiting team here in Vegas, this place gets really loud. And it gets really crazy, and a momentum swing that, in a lot of rinks, maybe you could fend off. It's a little tougher here, and it was too tough for the Oilers. They cracked. They didn't just crack, they broke, and Vegas won fair and square. So part of the deal here, lots of media, sure, there'll be extra people tonight. There's going to be extra Oilers fans in the crowd tonight. It's going to be even louder. It's a fun place for a big game to be tonight for sure.
Hey, Mark, speaking of sideways, the Edmonton Oilers were sideways for the first 25 games of the season. I know they made a coaching change, actually a couple of them. Paul Coffey's on the bench now. But you're around that team a lot. What were the players thinking at the start of the year?
Yeah, they were, they went from, oh, don't worry, we lost 8-1 on opening night. That's just a one-off. And then they lost another game to Vancouver, but they played pretty well. Then they beat Nashville. They said, okay, we're good now. Then they went to Philly and got crushed. So they went from a team that was very confident to a team that got a little shaky and a team that couldn't stop the slide. I think Leon Draisaitl said the other day that we kept coming to the rink saying, okay, this is our night. This is the night we turn it around. And then they lay a total egg and walk out of the rink scratching their toque saying, man, oh man, what now? So it was, they'll tell you on the outward, they're like that duck that was looking cool on the outside and swimming hard underneath the water. They were nervous, man. They were nervous. They had some issues here. They got a coaching change. They got some healthy players. They got some goaltending, and they haven't looked back since.
Yep.
Pierre was just saying before you came on, I'm not sure if you heard him there, Spec, but he made a great point just of how improved the defense has become. And obviously a big credit to Paul Coffey back there. What have you noticed about the structure in your own end since the change?
Yeah, this is the biggest thing. Like hockey in Edmonton, guys, everybody knows this. Back to the days in the 80s when they were playing the Bruins in the Stanley Cup final. It's never been about defensive hockey in Edmonton, right? It's never been about, we're going to beat you 2-1. It's never been that way here. This team has a franchise record going into this game, 14 straight games allowing 2 or less goals. That to me, as an observer of this team for a long time, this is the first time I can tell you that they've got a team here that if you go in the third period tied 1-1, they're very comfortable. They got no problem saying we're going to win a game 2-1, 3-1 on an empty netter. They've played not just the defense as such, Jimmy. They've been good. They've had 0 injuries. They got the same 6 guys every night. Skinner's been fantastic. And this group of forwards that was always into gambling and always trying to beat you 5-4 instead of 2-1, they've changed their tune. They're playing a way better defensive game. This is a much, much harder Oilers team to play against today than it's ever been.
I remember.
Mark, how do you know that Skinner's going to be great in the playoffs?
You don't. He was.
Yeah.
You don't. Right. You don't. He's a sophomore player, Pierre. Right. He's a sophomore goalie in the National Hockey League. Now he was a Calder Trophy finalist last year, and his numbers this year. He had a tough start, and now he's playing for 2.5 months. He's been great. So I guess I'd ask you, if this is your team and you're the coach, are you not going with this goaltender and waiting to see what he does in the playoffs?
Unless my general manager or president of hockey operations gets me a guy that's won the Stanley Cup before.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, they're not replacing. If things stay the way it is, they're not replacing this.
I would agree with that. 100%.
They're not replacing
I would agree with that. I would agree.
So their trade. Okay, so let's look at this then, right? So if it's not the goalie anymore, they've shored up the defense. What are the targets that you see the Oilers honing in on as we approach the deadline? What kind of players?
Well, ideally what they need here, I think like every playoff team, they'll find a defenseman. They'll find an NHL defenseman because someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Their 7th defenseman is a young kid named Philip Broberg that's on the farm. That's, he can play for you, but I'd rather he was my 8th defenseman going to the playoffs. I'll tell you that. You know what they need here? Last summer, they went out and got Connor Brown as a top 6 right winger. He's been a bust, not working. He hasn't been able to come back adequately from a torn ACL last year. He just hasn't helped. They need a guy that can play next to Leon Draisaitl on the right side. What happens then is Warren Foegele goes down a line to the third line where he probably belongs, and Corey Perry, who just joined this team, goes down a line to the 4th line. Now you got Janmark and Perry as your 4th line wingers. I think any NHL guy would say there's a couple of veteran 4th line guys. They shouldn't be on my 3rd line. They shouldn't be on my 2nd line. They can play for me on my 4th line. So I tell you there, it starts probably with a winger, hopefully a right winger for Ken Holland at the deadline.
How much do you think Corey Perry is going to see power play time, Spec?
0. Second unit. The second unit here doesn't play much, boys.
Oh, no, I'm aware. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, either the first unit puts it in the net or they play a minute and a half, one of the two.
Right.
And, looking up the middle, obviously set on 1 and 2 there. But on the 3rd line, what's been your thoughts on McLeod this year?
Not bad. Not bad. You know what? Okay. Would I prefer guys as a I just heard Pierre talk about all the Stanley Cups he's been to. I've been to a few myself, and pretty much every Stanley Cup winner that I've covered has a third line center that's like, Guy Carbonneau or Sammy Paulson or John Madden or Philip Deneau or Craig McTavish. You know what I'm getting at, right?
Yep.
Veteran, solid, face-off winning guy. McLeod's not that. So, yeah, I could see where you could I don't know if you could find that guy and fit him in under your cap. I doubt you can, boys. I doubt you can.
That's one in, one out.
Yeah, I'm not trading McLeod away at this point because he might turn into that guy. He's a really good young player. Like, you can't just trade away everything.
Right.
So listen, it's the cap system. Everybody has an area where they're not as strong as they want to be. There's nobody that's strong and happy with all the elements of their team. I think the Oilers will end up going into the playoffs with a third line center named Ryan McLeod and say, I wish he was Guy Carbonneau. He's not, but he's good enough for what we're doing here.
Did you ever think the Vancouver Canucks would be this good this year?
I sat down for dinner before the season opener in Vancouver, and all the Vancouver scribes were asking me how bad the Oilers were going to smoke them. And the score that night was 8-1 for the Canucks.
Wow.
And I've been wrong in the Canucks pretty much ever since, boys. So don't ask
who
me.
hasn't? You're in the majority there. I mean, what do you think for them? You're out there, you see them a lot more than us. What has it been for them? Besides, I'd say their coaching. I think Rick Tocchet's done an amazing job there. Pierre and I rave about him a lot. But in terms of the players, what have you seen different from them this year?
Well, just production from everywhere. Quinn Hughes took a huge step here. A huge step this year. He's going to win the Norris Trophy. Okay. So that's where it starts. You've seen production, Brock Besser has found a new level. He was kind of swimming around, underachieving, in my opinion, for a few years. Well, not anymore. Boom. Pedersen, we've known to be a very good player. JT Miller has really stepped up and become a leader on that team. They get Hronik, the defenseman. The one thing about Quinn Hughes, they always had a 25-minute defenseman in Quinn Hughes, but they were playing him with a guy who shouldn't be playing over 20 minutes, and that was killing them. While Hronik's there now, he's been able to play the same minutes as Quinn Hughes and survive him and be a good player. That helps a lot. So they got a bunch of stuff going on there, and I'm with you, man. Rick Tocchet, he's got to get the Jack Adams this year. I can't see how he wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, Spec, Jimmy asked you about Vancouver and the defense, and you gave a great answer. Chris Tanev was with the first partner that Quinn Hughes ever had in Vancouver. Calgary's starting this road trip in Boston. They have Noah Hannafin. They have Chris Tanev. They've already moved Elias Lindholm. When does Calgary get into full sell mode?
Yeah, they got to get into it, Pierre. They got to get into it. They are. I believe that they will sell defensemen. I'm going to ask you this, two things. If I'm running Calgary right now today, and I'm looking up the highway to Edmonton, I'm looking at a team, I'm saying, I don't know what's going to happen with David and Draisaitl. I know their contracts are coming up, but assuming they sign those guys, and I think they'll sign at least one or probably both of them.
Yeah.
I'm looking up the highway and I'm saying, I don't have a chance of beating this team in the next 4 or 5
I agree.
years, right? I got a new arena coming in Calgary. They haven't even broken ground on that thing, so it's 3 or 4 years away. I'm not going to beat the Oilers between now and then. Why am I not totally rebuilding and getting ready to open that new building with a chance once Edmonton's getting older? Maybe I got a shot. Wouldn't you do the same thing?
100%. I couldn't agree more. That's one of the most lucid arguments I've heard about the Calgary Flames needing to sell. And what breaks my heart is you see Johnny Gaudreau leave for nothing. The Tkachuk deal was a disaster, unmitigated disaster, and they got to wake up. They can't keep making these mistakes because they're going to get blown away by Vancouver and they're going to get blown away by Edmonton.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say to you that at the time they made that, the Treliving made that deal with Tkachuk to, who'd he get? Uyghur and Huberdeau.
Yeah.
We all thought that was a pretty good trade.
No, I didn't. I went on the air and said that was a disaster.
Yeah.
I thought it was an okay trade. Huberdeau's disappointed. Huberdeau's
I saw him play a lot in Florida. I can tell you, I knew this was coming, especially with Darryl coaching there. That was like oil and water. That just wasn't going to work.
And he's go ahead, Spec.
It didn't work. I mean, that's what you said at the time, you were right and I was wrong. I just thought that a GM under pressure to make a move with a good player like Kachuk, I thought he brought back a lot of stuff for that guy. And Goodrow kind of screwed him, guys. He left it to the very end, made him believe he was going to stay, and then he left. I'm not a big Goodrow fan, but they could have got more than nothing for him.
100%. That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. You can't lose Noah Hannafin for nothing. You can't lose Chris Tanev for nothing. They have to be proactive on this, Mark, and I think you agree they're going to be.
Yep, I would agree. And, one thing, too, you made a great point there, Spec, like Pierre said. By the time maybe that arena comes and you do go into a rebuild, think of and I know the cap's going up, so they're going to get a little more of a cushion, but still, think of the space they could build up, the cap space there to have to play with as that new arena is ushered in. That should be some perfect timing. So I think you're on the right track there, Spec. One thing I look at, though, with Calgary, guys, and I think is, we haven't heard it a lot. It's been tossed out there a bit, is Markstrom. And, if he really – I don't think it's something we're going to see now before the deadline. But if he was to become available at, say, the draft, they could really reshape things with prospects and picks and really get on that track that you said they should be on, eh?
Well, I want to ask you this. If I'm a veteran like Markstrom or Hannafin, and I see what's going on here in Calgary, assuming they are going down the road, I think we all think they're going down, and Tanev, put his name in this list too. Yep. What am I hanging around for?
Yeah.
Right? Why am I staying for a rebuild? I'm a veteran guy. I want to win now. So, listen, they have to figure out their goaltending in Calgary because Dustin Wolf, who's a two-time AHL goalie of the year, becomes waiver eligible next season. Yeah. So they've got Vladar, who in everybody's eyes is a solid number 2, and let's see how many games he can play. 100%. And they got this kid coming up that it's time to find out if Dustin Wolf can play. I'm with you. Markstrom's salary is not bad. What's he make? 6.5, I think.
Yeah, he's right in there.
Yeah, so it's not that bad. He's a genuine number 1 goalie in the National Hockey League. It's a summertime trade. There's no doubt it's a summertime trade. But if I'm Calgary, I move him. I go ahead with the 2 younger guys, and I get something back for him. Yep.
Mark, are the fans in Calgary prepared for a rebuild like they were in New York when the Rangers sent out that letter saying, hey, we're moving everything, we're rebuilding? Are the fans in Calgary prepared for that?
Yeah, I believe that they are. Calgary's been stuck in the murky middle for 20-some years, right? Yeah. They've been a 8th place team. They had a couple good years. They got in the playoffs, lost to Colorado in 6 and lost to Edmonton in 5. Other than that, they've been a middle of the road, not too bad to get a good draft pick, not too good to win playoff series. I think the fans there are ready for something different than what hasn't been working since all the way back when Mika Kiprusoff was one of the best goaltenders in hockey and masked a lot of problems that that team had back then. I think a Canadian market of all the listen, there's no Red Sox here. There's no Patriots here. There's no college football team that's stealing your advertisers and your ticket buyers here. It's a one-horse town, Calgary, just like Edmonton. So you can rebuild and still fill that rink, I guarantee you.
Yeah, for sure.
Great point. That's a really good point.
Our Calgary resident Calgary fan in our chat section says $6 million exactly on Markstrom, and yes, we're begging for that rebuild. So bring it on.
There you go.
There you go. How about the Edmonton fans, Spec? Talk to us about. Give me a word to describe the Edmonton fans in mid-November, and a word to describe them now.
Yeah, in mid-November was absolute disbelief. Like, listen, Edmonton, I would say to you that of all the guys, like the 3 of us and all the guys we all know around the business who get forced to pick a Stanley Cup winner in September, which I hate, but we all have to do it, right? I think that I saw Edmonton's name as a Stanley Cup prediction as much or more than any other team in the league.
I agree.
So let's just say, just for fun in this conversation, the Oilers go in the season. A lot of people think they're going to win the first cup in Canada since 1993, and we're 12 games in. They're 2-9-1. They're losing to San Jose, and they're tied for 32nd place. So, yeah. Like, were you kidding me? People couldn't believe their eyes. You fire a coach. And since November 24th, they're the best team in hockey. That's 2.5 months now. They're back on track. They're 5 points behind Vegas with 5 games in hand. So they're as close to second place in the Pacific as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if this thing keeps going, this club walks into the playoffs. I'm not sure you can find a team that's going to say, I want to play Edmonton.
What's been the magic formula for Coach Knobloch? What's he doing different compared to Coach Woodcroft?
Well, I mean, technically, he's done a few little things different. Woodcroft tried to install some new things in the defensive zone that didn't suit this team and didn't work, and they backed off of those. Mm-hmm. He's done a few things. I won't bore you with the details. He's done a few things in the neutral zone that are different. Mm-hmm. But he's managed to calm down a team that is pretty good. They got good players here. Like this, I agree. Look at the roster. They got a lot of good players. He's calmed down a team. He's found a way to, he's in the right, in some ways, guys, he's in the right place at the right time. Connor McDavid's 27. He's in his prime. He's the best captain today, a better captain than he's ever been. His game looks like Sid Crosby's, okay? He's playing defense like a demon. He's battling physically. He's behind his own net fighting for pucks. He's not the old Connor McDavid that's looking to win the Art Ross, and he's kind of breaking out of the zone and all that. So I think the coach has got a good team. He's recognized how, and he knows what to do with it. He knows how to use it. I'm not taking credit away from Knobloch, but what he's really doing is he's getting a bunch of good players to play as well as as they have the ability to play.
Mark, just before Jimmy comes to you, I have one more for you on that. How much did the relationship between Connor McDavid and Chris Knobloch from Erie play into the comfort level that McDavid's playing with right now?
Yeah, they trust each other, right? Mm-hmm. They trust each other. I'm here to tell you, they did, like McDavid, Draisaitl, the leaders on this team, Hyman, Ekholm, they didn't want Woodcroft fired. They were all a little bit sour that Jay Woodcroft got fired. It reflected poorly on them. And I know, because I talk to these guys every day.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. McDavid wasn't pleased. He didn't come out and he's not taking a strip off Kenny Holland. Don't get me wrong, but he didn't love that, right? It didn't look good. But you know what? They settled in. They found the new coach. They refocused their game, and I don't think anyone's looking back now at the decision that Jeff Jackson and Ken Holland made and saying it's the wrong one.
Yep.
Would you? Let's forget about the superstars. Well, you might call them that. I don't know, but would you agree that one of Ken Holland's best moves since he's been to Edmonton is to sign Zach Hyman to that deal?
Well, it's been one of the best free agent signings in hockey. I mean, you got a $5 million player that's on pace for 50 some goals. That's,
but he brings so much more. That's what I love about him. He's not just scoring. He brings a work ethic that from afar, it looks like the other guys are feeding off.
Yeah. He's the dirty goal guy on a team full of guys that fill your highlight reel every night. He's the guy that goes in with his shovel and his work boots and all those cliches and scores. But you know what else he is, guys? To me, what I see is, first of all, he's a really smart guy. Like he's just a smart person.
Yep.
And one of the things he's learned here and figured out quickly is he's playing with McDavid. So how do I maximize being McDavid's winger? And he said to me, I've spoken to, he talks to Connor all the time. When you do this, where do you want me? If you're going over there, where's the best place for me to be? And you guys know, Pierre, you were in Pittsburgh. The finding the right wingers for Sid Crosby's always been a problem. He's a hard guy to play with because you got to think the game at Sid's level, and that's hard, man. Not a lot of guys. So they always find guys like Chris Kunitz, who's a smart cat, and Brian Rust was a
Jake Gensel.
And now Jake Gensel, but not necessarily superstars, but smart guys. Well, Hyman's that smart guy with McDavid. He's figured it out. And look at his stats, right? They're pretty good stats.
I got to tell you guys this right now because I was on the other side of it when Hyman became available. And I would just tell you this right now. It wasn't the only team that wanted Zach Hyman. Well, I'm just going to let you know that, clearing my conscience. So not everybody in the league was actually asleep on Zach Hyman. Some of us actually tried to get him. That being said, Zach Hyman was smart enough, as Spec said, Jimmy, to pick Edmonton. He chose Edmonton. He did.
Yeah.
And that's the thing people forget. It's like when John Tavares went to Toronto, he chose Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
When Steven Stamkos chose not to go back to Toronto and stay in Tampa, he chose to stay in Tampa. And I can tell you right now, Zach Hyman, who's a product of Toronto, chose to leave the Leafs to go to Edmonton.
Yeah.
He wanted to go there. Trust me, we tried to get him. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Let me ask you this too, Pierre. I mean, I'm sure, you saw him play in college a lot more than most of us.
Yeah.
What was he like in college? And do you see some of it now, or is he transformed into something else?
No, he was a dominant player because he could really skate. Speck touched on it perfectly. I thought he's a really smart guy. He writes books. He's an author.
Wow.
He's not a dumb guy. He's a really smart guy.
Wow.
And he comes from a fantastic family. And this kid cares about family. He's grounded. He's highly cerebral. And the biggest thing to me is when I watched him play at Michigan, he was first on the forecheck. He was first on the back check. He was the first guy to get to the net. Like all those characteristics that Mark sees every day, he was doing that for Red Berenson at Michigan. Wow. Like this hadn't changed at all. And that, I think the sad part is the Toronto Maple Leafs, I don't think measured enough of what he was about.
Bingo.
I wasn't in their meetings, but I can just tell you, like, that guy was never really appreciated enough in Toronto, I think.
Oh, I'm so with you. I think the mistake the Leafs made was not recognizing what they lack, right? They lack all the things that Zach Hyman brings.
Agreed.
They should have moved out some sort of quote unquote soft skill and kept Zach Hyman instead of saying, we got to keep all these skillful guys. And there was no money there for Hyman.
Yeah.
There's no money for Hyman. He left as a free agent. Big mistake for the Leafs. Absolutely.
Well, Pierre
is spot on. I'm just telling you, Jimmy. Mark is so spot on this.
He always is. Pierre and I, we said this a couple times that Toronto is Edmonton East and Edmonton is Toronto West. But you look at it now, guys, and everything you're just talking about. I just was thinking about it as you were saying that Edmonton's figuring it out. That, like you just said, Spec, it's not all about skill. You have to have good skill foundation players, but you can't just load up on these like a semi all-star team and expect to win a Stanley Cup. It just doesn't work that way. You need role guys, you need intelligent guys, you need two-way guys, and Edmonton is starting to figure that out there. So kudos to Ken Holland for getting that going there, and obviously for Knoblauch coming in there.
So you know what? I just want to throw one more thing at Mark because Jimmy, you're talking about all these different players. The one guy that never gets enough acclaim, and I know Mark will either slam me for this or agree. Derek Ryan. Do most fans in the league even know Derek Ryan plays for the Edmonton Oilers? Do they even know that?
Yeah, he's a quiet cat. Hey, he didn't play his first NHL game till he was 29 years old.
It's an amazing story. It's unbelievable.
Really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Spec, do you agree? Like this guy's a really useful player.
He's a fourth, and I think what's working here in Edmonton is he's a fourth line center, right? There's teams that would have to play him as their third line center, and he probably doesn't have the wheels for that. He doesn't have the ability. But as your 4C, he's an absolutely useful penalty killer. He's a right shot guy, really, really smart. For those hockey nerds out there, he played for the University of Alberta Golden Bears for the great Claire Drake.
Yeah,
and
Hall of Fame coach Claire Drake.
Hall of Fame, Hockey Hall of Famer Billy Moore's a really good program from which Chris Knoblauch also comes. So my point is this: when you're playing university hockey in Canada, there's a reason. Usually it's because you're frankly not good enough to play in the NHL, but you're also a smart player. Well, he's a smart player who found his way to be good enough to play in the NHL. And he's an important part of this team. And I know that Connor McDavid has told me he's an important part of the dressing room. He's doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, everybody else shuts up because when DR's handing out some knowledge, right, it comes from the right place.
Jimmy, you see, it's not about analytics with Derek Ryan. It's the eye test. It's the eye test on Derek Ryan.
We have Spec on the eye test right now. Come on now.
That's why we have Spec on. Exactly.
Spec, before I let you go, you mentioned it earlier, when we started to talk about what has been the differences under Knoblauch and what they're doing, and we talked about structure, and you said, they're winning those 2-1 games, 1-0 games, those tight, contested playoff-like games. Spec, I recall a reporter saying that to one Leon Draisaitl early in the season. And I wonder, has Leon apologized for kind of his reaction to that? Because let's call a spade, man. You were dead on. You were right, and you deserve credit for it.
Yeah, no, I don't keep.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble with him, but
I don't keep those
tell
receipts.
like it is.
Listen, I ask some dumb questions sometimes too, and I
That
hope
was a
people
good one,
forget
though,
about
buddy.
them. So I don't expect you to remember when it's a smart one.
No, it was good. It was good. You read
Really
the
good.
temperature, man. And you know what? I'm sure privately he'd say, yeah, you were right. I know.
Yeah, oh yeah. Hey,
He was under the gun. He was just under pressure. But
that's it.
good
It's a
stuff,
tough
man.
time,
Keep
pal.
it up out there. We appreciate you taking the time and enjoy the festive atmosphere in Vegas today with the Super Bowl crowd and the Oilers Knights. It's going to be a heck of an atmosphere. Have fun tonight.
All right, boys. Thanks for having me. You got my number anytime.
Thanks
All
a
right.
lot, Mark. Really nice to see you.
stuff.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark Spector joining us from Sportsnet. He's
Wow.
covered the Oilers, the Flames, and some
Jimmy,
Canucks as well.
Jimmy,
He's one of the great
that
ones.
was outstandingly informative.
Yeah, that's why I want to know.
He just tells it. He lays it out there.
Yep.
You know, I was interviewed by Spec when I was coaching, and I got to know him, a fair bit when I'd go out west. And he lays it out there. He's not afraid to, and I really respect that about him. I really do.
As long as you can back it up here. That's what Russ Conway used to tell me.
But he does the work.
Back it up, then ask
Yeah.
the tough questions.
So just the reason why I brought up Derek Ryan is because the name of our show is The Eye Test. Most fans in the league don't even know who Derek Ryan is. But did you hear what Mark said? He was 29 when he played his first NHL game. He
cool.
played for the University of Alberta. He played for Billy Morris, who's a legendary person in Alberta hockey. He played for the great Claire Drake. So when he talks in the dressing room, all those Alberta guys, they pay attention.
Yeah.
Because they know the road that Derek Ryan's had to travel to get to where he is. So I'm backing Spec up here because that just shows you this is not a guy that just throws names out. He's doing the work.
Yep.
He's doing the research. And I really appreciate when we have people, and you did a great job getting them on. We have people like Mark on. We all get better. We all get smarter.
Yes, that's what people are saying right here in our comments section, Pierre. They're all agreeing with us. And look, I love to, like, he's seen so much in that area, that market. He's seen the ups and downs, and obviously been a lot more downs over the last 20 years. But he keeps that and he applies it and intertwines it with the current. You know what I mean? And he does a great job of that, of understanding the ebbs and flow. And he's part of that area, man. It was great to have him on. And look, I'm not trying to just butter him up there. He called it, man. He said to Draisaitl, and Draisaitl got ticked off the time, and I get it. They were in the middle of a huge slump. It happens. I've had it done to me. But he nailed it. He said, you guys can win these tight games. Why are you always going for these 5-4, 6-4 games? They just didn't have it in their mindset, and now it's hammered in, Pierre. And it's almost as if they, like he said, McDavid enjoys more playing those type of games than the old 6-4 game.
He didn't always. So I didn't want to be disrespectful. He didn't always. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
I remember when Todd McClellan was coaching the Edmonton Oilers and McDavid and Draisaitl were just getting their feet wet in the league. And I was doing a game in St. Louis one night, and the steam was just coming out of Todd's ears because these guys were all over the ice, but on the wrong end of the ice. They were never back in their own zone. Now I think they're starting to appreciate a little more. You know what else I appreciate about Mark Spector on our show? The knowledge of Calgary and what's actually going on there.
Of the
that's different. It's a way different market than Edmonton. It is. It's a way different. So there's way more corporate money in Calgary than there is in Edmonton. So the fans in Edmonton are a little bit more blue collar, and they pay, and they make a lot of noise. There's not as much noise in Calgary. There just isn't. I'm just telling you, it's two totally different markets.
There's a lot of free tickets from work going on there, showing up in the second period. I know what you mean, Pierre.
You know what else I like what Mark said, and sorry to cut you off, Jimmy. They're probably the most ripe of all the Canadian teams right now to do a rebuild.
Yeah,
because of the building situation. You know what? Spec was spot on. That's really good intel too, because he's right. And they haven't even broken ground yet. And like in Ottawa, I follow that one close. They haven't broken ground yet in Ottawa. Like everybody's, the building will be ready in 3 years. No, it won't. You ever been to an Ottawa winter? Not a chance. Not a chance. So let's just calm down. And it's the same in Calgary.
Yeah.
You know, I know they get Chinooks that blow through Calgary in the middle of winter, but it doesn't happen the whole winter. It's still cold.
It's still cold, man. It's still cold. I'm with you. And, you know, like you talk about two markets too, Pierre. That's one thing I feel so blessed to have lived in Montreal for a little and to have understood the opposite side of the Bruins-Canadiens rivalry. Not only did it make me appreciate their market more, it made me appreciate hockey more. Just learning about a market like that wasn't my own, that wasn't the one I was used to. And Spec does that as well. And he even delves into Vancouver too. I mean, he could talk the Canucks with the best of them up there. So
he nailed Roenick.
Yes.
He nailed the thing.
What an under the radar pick that is. Nobody talks about that, Pierre.
But he nailed that. So Hughes has never been the same since Tanev left. And they identified internally. And this is where management and team building matters a ton. We need to get a guy that can play on the right side with Quinn Hughes. Yep. And they got a guy. And he's not a big ticket guy either. You know, he's always been a minus player just because he was on bad teams in Detroit. But now you see where he's at, and that's a really good time. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in Vancouver said, you know what? Tanev was really good here.
Wait, another Calgary, Vancouver.
Let's try to get Tanev back here. I could just see it. I'm just telling you. Now, I think there'll be other teams that will want Tanev. Like there's a perfect fit in certain marketplaces. Yeah. Hello, New York Rangers. Hello, line one. You know, so you know, New Jersey Devils, line two. Yeah. You know, there's certain teams where Tanev fits really well. Maybe Detroit. Maybe Detroit. If they think they're realistically going to be a play, which I think they have a chance to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
So that's going to be. But Hannafin's the guy, Jimmy. We've been on him since we started the eye test.
I'm going to see him tonight.
You're going to see him up front and personal tonight.
Yep.
And that's the guy. Calgary cannot drop the ball on that player because of his age, because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, and he's not going back there.
Yeah.
Let me ask you drop the ball.
First off, two questions. You say potentially a Calgary-Vancouver trade again. Can you remember a year in which we saw three separate trades between the same two teams? I cannot.
No, I really, honestly, I can't. I'd have to go look, but I honestly can't.
Check that out. And the other one too, Pierre, is you look at Calgary with Tanev right now. A lot of people I've been listening to, I listen to so many different radio shows every day throughout the day as I'm writing. And a lot of people are saying that a Tanev deal would be done by now, obviously, if they could get a first-round pick. I don't know if you can get a first-round pick.
Not a 34 without a contract. That'd be really
injury history too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm a big fan of the player.
I don't think it's coming. I think you need to act now. I don't say wait to the deadline. Get that done ASAP.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I could see a prospect and a pick, so you get two assets rather than one, and it's not going to be on the cap for you. But I think to say a first-round pick for Christopher, I would be. No. I think it's a reach. I personally wouldn't do it, and I really am enamored by the player. I'm a big fan of the player. No. He's the best player. I can tell you this right now, Jimmy, and I know fans at home don't care. He came out of a real solid Division I college hockey program at RIT. Mm-hmm. He's the best player that's ever come out of that program.
Yep.
And that's – I'm just telling you, they've had a lot of useful players, not NHL guys. They've had a lot of good players. Wayne Wilson's done a tremendous job there. Before him, Bruce Delventhal did a really good job there. I'm just telling you. And even way back when Brian Mason was the coach's name that started their greatness, they had really good – I'm just telling you, they had good play. He's the best player that ever played there.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Look, let's get to the comment section here, Pierre, because I got a train to catch, my friend. So we'll try and get out of here by 5-ish, I'm hoping. But let's get to the comment section right now and get some questions in. And by the way, Evan, I just want everyone. Oh, and there he is with the first question. So Evan, we're going to answer that question, but I want you to know your video question you said it's in the queue, but because our production crew is in Vegas, it's just they got too much going on. Next week, it'll be the first question we read on Monday when they get back to their home base in Montreal. All right. So Evan says right there, put that question up again. Was it Dubas who let Hyman go?
Yes.
Yep. Yes, it was. And not a good move by him. Not a good move by him again. All right. Next question. Pierre, can you talk about the importance of Duchesne for Dallas's rival cause the resurgence of Seguin, balance their trios, allows the veterans to play less minutes, and somehow produce more? Great observation there by
That's a really smart take on Matty Duchene. I also think Pete DeBoer and Steve Spott know him really well, especially Pete from the Ontario Hockey League. So there's a relationship there and there's a bond there that really helps a lot. But I think the biggest thing is Jamie Benn is an amazing leader. And I think when Mac comes in there, he doesn't have much of a voice in the room and he just has to follow what the top Ryan Suter and Jamie Benn say. And if you follow those guys, you're going to be okay. But Matt makes a difference there. There's no question. That's a great point by the questioner. Really good point.
And I'm glad he brought up Sagan there too. Well, Sagan isn't really getting a lot of love for the resurgence he's had this year, Pierre.
No, I can tell you this. 2 years ago, I spent a lot of time watching Dallas because we were thinking about maybe doing a deal with Dallas. So I watched them a lot, and Tyler was not the same player. This is 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I give him a lot of credit. He's really worked hard to get back to where he is. And I think Duchene's part of that. I think Ben's part of that. I think Pete DeBoer's part of it. So no, I'm so happy for him. I know a lot of people in Boston got this different thing about Tyler Sagan, but can I just tell one quick story?
Sure, go ahead.
When they had the bombing at the Boston Marathon, there were a bunch of young prep school young ladies who were near the finish line, and one of them got hurt. She didn't die, but she got hurt. And her favorite Boston Bruin player, Tyler Sagan. So I got a call from this man who's a friend of mine in Boston who said, look, Pierre, I know you know Tyler. Can you get him to get in touch with this young lady? She's in the hospital. And I called Tyler up right away, and he says, absolutely, give me your number. I gave the number, and Tyler got right in touch and blew the young lady away. She was so excited to get this call from Tyler Sagan. And it was amazing. And he never once said, no, not a chance. I'm not doing that. Like right away, give me the number. And he did it right away. I was really impressed, impressed.
Look, Pierre, and you mentioned, I know there were issues there in Boston. We won't even get into any of that, but it's interesting you say that. One of the moments where I gained a whole new respect for Tyler was that same year. All right. So it's after they had lost to the Chicago Blackhawks in Game 6. And I think he might have been hurt, and yet he couldn't meet the media in the usual media availability. But they said, look, if you guys want to talk to Tyler, he'll come outside. He'll meet you outside the dressing room in about 30 minutes or something. And so some of us went back there, and he comes out and he's bawling, and he's literally bawling. Yeah. And I'm just, okay, he's bawling because they lost the Stanley Cup. And we said, oh, horrible. He goes, no, I'm not crying because we lost the Stanley Cup final. I'm crying because we couldn't finish it off for this city when they needed us most. I'm crying because we let them down. And because if you know, Pierre, you covered that whole playoff.
Yeah.
The Bruins and, of course, the Red Sox, who went on to actually finish a job and win the World Series in October that year, the Bruins and Red Sox literally took that city and put them on their shoulders. I don't know how they get through it without those two teams. People try and think, oh, it's not really true. You overrate sports. BS.
No.
Sports heals. Sports heals, and it unites. And that city became united around those two teams, and he could not let it go that they had not won. And I just looked, I said, no, man, you took him on a ride nobody was expecting. That's all that matters. And he said, I don't know, I can't see it that way. So I saw him later in that off season, and he said, hey, thanks for saying that time, because I did some reflecting and I started to realize, we did do our job. I just wish we could have given the cup to them. And that's why I was so upset. But that's a story for people that question Tyler Sagan and his heart and his desire to be there for his fans. Just remember that.
Yeah. Well said, Jimmy. Well said.
Yep. Good stuff. All right. Another question here. Alex Evanowski, where would the Rangers be with... We just talked about this.
Alex has been listening to our phone calls.
Are you tapping our calls, Alex? Without Jonathan Quick, the guy is so underrated and underappreciated. He was probably one of the top two goalies of the 2010 to 2019 era, and he went to UMass Amherst. Pierre
and Avon Old Farms,
and Avon
and
Old
he played for Mid Fairfield. So let's just keep going.
Literally said this on the phone. I texted Pierre last night too. I said, "This is a great story going on." Now I'm gonna say this, Pierre, and it was just, I know it's never gonna happen. But if you were judging on the way they're playing at the current moment and the playoffs started tomorrow, is he your starting goalie for the Rangers?
He might be. He might very well be. And I think the only way he wouldn't be is if Peter Laviolette just didn't have the same vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just did Pittsburgh radio with the great Mark Madden, and it's a hit we do every Tuesday, and it's a ton of fun. Mark is so plugged in. He cares about hockey a ton. Anyways, he said about Shesterkin and about Quick. And I said, well, it's nice to have a 1A and 1B. But in this case, you don't know who 1A is right now, and you don't know who 1B is. You really don't.
It's such a great story, too. And for those that don't know, Pierre, I mean, you can explain better than me the background in this kid before he was even at UMass and the like, what a crazy Rangers fan he was growing up.
Huge Rangers fan.
Dream for him.
He married a young lady. Her father's name is Mike Backman. And Mike was a longtime New York Ranger player. And so Matt Molson, who played at Cornell and was a great New York Islander and played around the league and in LA, Matt Molson married the other Backman sister. So Quick is married to one daughter, Molson's married to the other, and Sean Backman's their brother-in-law, who played at Yale for Keith Elaine and played pro hockey for a while too. Sean was a very good player. But all I can tell you is Jonathan Quick's a kid that grew up in Connecticut, played for Mid Fairfield with Cam Atkinson and Max Pacioretty, pretty good players at that age. He went to UMass Amherst, actually started his pro career, I want to say in Trenton or Reading in the East Coast Hockey League.
Even it was Trenton.
So he started either in Trenton or Reading. And, you know, the rest is history. I did one interview with him during the Stanley Cup run, their first cup when they beat New Jersey. And I said, Jonathan, I asked Zach Parise about where his nice guy image comes from because he was playing for New Jersey. I said, I'm not going to ask you that. He goes, no, don't. I'm not a nice guy. He goes, I'm about winning. I said, I get that. And so I said, you know, a lot of kids grew up wanting to be Marty Brodeur. A lot of kids grew up wanting to be Patrick Waugh. A lot of kids want to grow up and be Dominic Hasek. What would you tell me if I said a lot of kids want to be Jonathan Quick? You know what I said to me? They're going to end up in the emergency room because they're never going to be able to play goal like I do. It was priceless. And you know what? It was a foreshadow of what really was going to happen to him because of the way he played, all the injuries that he incurred over time.
It is some great scouting by the Kings to get him.
That's phenomenal scouting by the Kings. Phenomenal.
And it was Reading, by the way, Pierre. I just looked it up for you. So good call. Okay. So, all right, next question. Fishin, is David Savard worth a first-round pick? You know, it's funny when we were talking about Tanev, that was in the back of my head. So you keep reading our mind here, Fishin. He could be.
I think the Canes are going to expect a first-round pick. Yep. I do. I think they'll expect the first-round pick. Doesn't mean they'll get one, but I think that's where they're going to start with David. You know, you got Stanley Cup pedigree from Tampa. You got, you know, back in the day when he was in Moncton, he was a Canadian Major Junior Defenseman of the Year because he got a lot of points. He doesn't do that anymore, but he can still move the puck. He can still shoot the puck. He's a fearless shot blocker, and he's a jumbo body. He's just a jumbo body, and he doesn't cost you a lot on the cap. So I could see a team coming close. I don't know if exactly you'll get a first-round pick, but I could see a team coming close.
So, Pierre, you know, I was just looking up his stats right now and looking at him, his background.
Well, look at his junior stats. They're massive numbers. Yeah,
that's what I was just going to get to. 77 points with the Moncton Wildcats in 2009-10 in 64 games, 64 helpers. Yeah. But, Pierre, I know another thing I noticed, too. You know, while he went on to, you know, win a cup with Tampa, where was he before that? And what did he help them do to Tampa? That was one of the biggest upsets in playoff history.
So I did that series, and I'm going to tell you right now, that was John Tortorella at his finest. Oh, yeah. They were down 3-0 in game one. I'm just telling you, Columbus was down 3-0. And John Tortorella changed it all up. He said, we're not going to play passive anymore. We're going to be aggressive on the forecheck. We're going to pinch our defensemen down. And we're going to do one other thing. We're going to get our defensemen involved in the rush. So by being an aggressive team rather than a passive team, they made Tampa really uncomfortable. Yeah. And they just ran the table with Tampa after that. They did. It was unbelievable. And I really thought at that time when that happened, John Cooper was in trouble in Tampa. I
Yep.
really felt he was in trouble. And they gave him a little bit more of a lifeline to play with, and he took advantage of it. So I give John full marks for that. But I thought when they lost that one, I thought he was in trouble.
Yeah, and you know what though, and that was an example, and I love to see. We see it a lot of times in sports here, and I remember Mark Recchi telling me the same thing when they blew that lead to Philly in 2010 in the second round. Teams need moments like that.
Yeah.
Teams that are building towards a championship, right? Sometimes they really need to get slapped in the face. They really need just a whack to say, "Whoa, what was that?" And then you realize the champions are the ones that bounce back from that. You know, the Bruins did it the following year, and then Tampa Bay went on to do it. So I wonder too, and I always think about the Red Sox when they lost. You know, Aaron Boone hits that home run, Game 7, 2003. I know it's not hockey, but then they go on, they come back, they make that great comeback in 2004. I don't see them doing that if Aaron Boone doesn't hit that home run. It's just
See, you're not old enough. You're not old enough to remember Bucky Dent. So
apparently, well, they took a while to recover from that one.
When Bucky Dent hit that, I was just a kid playing high school football. I'd just come down from Canada, New Jersey, and I remember all my teammates, they were going nuts. I'm like, what are you talking about? Why is this such a big deal? You know, the Yankees beat the Red Sox. You know? I said, I'm an Expos fan. I don't care about the Yankees or the Red Sox. I'm an Expos fan.
You know Bill Lee. I know we're sidetracking here, but quick, you know Bill Lee, right?
Yeah.
No, like, yeah.
He's an awesome human. Bill Lee is awesome. Awesome guy.
You know, to this day, he still won't shake Bucky Dent's hand.
I believe it. I do.
1978. That anyhow. All right, 2 more questions here. And
that's good. But then you got to catch your train.
Yep. All right, Randy Workman. Can you guys address the overview on pucks off skates in the net? Is there not a more easy way to determine whether it's a goal or not? Great call. Great question.
Okay, Randy. So here, part of why this is a sensitive issue, and it's a big rule. I understand people get frustrated with it. Why they don't want players utilizing their feet to put pucks in the net is it's a safety issue. They don't want guys starting to flail away with their feet kicking, and the goalie's exposed, and all of a sudden their skate cuts or defensemen are getting cut or somebody gets kicked in the face. So that's part of why that rule's in place. And I think the league's actually done a better job of it, Jimmy. I don't know what your feeling is, but I think they've done a better job of making sure there's more of a standardized position of the puck directed in by the skate. Right. But I can tell you the reason why you can't kick a puck in is for safety reasons, especially back in the day when goalies didn't wear masks.
Yeah.
You know, that was really dangerous. And they were on their bellies a lot, and they were facing the puck, and guys bring their feet in. It can cause a problem.
It baffles me that they did it for so long without a mask.
It is unbelievable.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
All right. Final question of the day here. If we have one. I think that might be it. All right. I think that's it, Pierre. It's all right. That was a great job. Well, what do we got? No. Yep. That's it. That's it, my friends.
Spec was outstanding. Mark Spector did a tremendous job. Good job by you getting them on. You know, I'm really excited about startup after the All-Star break. Most of it, like you saw, was a tight game with the Rangers last night in Colorado. Rangers come from behind and win that game. And then you see a real tight game between the Islanders and the Leafs. And, you know, the Islanders are teetering, but look at the standings and look at the points. Toronto's not exactly out of the woods yet.
No, they're not.
And so, you know, I know people say, oh, they'll get better. They'll go to another level. They better get there soon.
Yeah. I want to ask you too, Pierre, just before we go. We'll do my question from Jimmy in the Village here. Let me ask you, do you think there's credence to people saying that teams that come back that had, let's say, 3 or more guys at the All-Star weekend are going to be flat and are going to struggle out of the gate?
It does create a bit of a problem. I remember when we were in Pittsburgh.
Leafs last night.
Yes, I remember when we were in Pittsburgh. I think we had 6 or 7 guys there, plus our coach. I was there. Scotty was there. Our coaching staff was there in '92. I think we had a little bit of a downer coming out of it. And I do think there's some merit to that. I really do. It's kind of like when you play the Winter Classic
Yeah.
It usually takes 5 to 7 days to get reacclimated. And I think Vegas went through that this year and Seattle went through it this year. They both played in the Classic. It's a different kind of an element to an NHL season. So it does take you about 5 or 6 days to get out of it.
And plus, some of these guys are coming off like 9 or 10 days off, Pierre. So, of course, there's going to be rust. They're humans.
So, I'm just going to say this to you, and I think we talked about it off the air as well, Jimmy. The best news that came out of Toronto this weekend when they announced they're going to the Olympics.
Oh, so
it was all the other stuff was, to me, doesn't matter. Now, I know the stuff in London, Ontario is really significant. And so I think the league obviously handled it in their way legally that I think they probably have to.
Yes, they can.
But the best news item to come out of that was we're sending our best players to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I think that if you were to ask Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon or Austin Matthews, you go around hockey and just ask the best players. You work with the Boston Bruins every day. You don't think Charlie McAvoy's jacked up to go to the Olympics?
Pierre, USA Hockey in general, because let's look at it. You look at the progression of where, the way the Olympics were going, they were just falling short. They're always getting beat by Canada, so close, but no cigar. And since then, there's been so much infusion of American talent, high-end skill from the States into the NHL. And they got to be sitting there being like, are you kidding me that we can't be at these Olympics right now after everything we've been through? We're finally at that point to take it over the top. So they're just going to make it because some of these guys now are going to be pushing 30 a little over, but they're still going to be all right. I think it's going to be a great tournament. I mean, there are going to be so many good teams there. I think the biggest question, though, Pierre, is, and I don't know if anyone asked it, correct me if I'm wrong, have they ruled Russia out completely?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because hopefully the war is over by then.
Yeah.
So that will be a real interesting thing to see if they're allowed and how that even makes it even better in terms of competition.
So I got one question for you. Is Macklin Celebrini going to play for Team Canada?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I know you watched him like I watched him yesterday.
Yes, I could see it.
Now you see what I'm talking about? This guy's Jonathan Toews with more speed. He's Jonathan Toews with more speed.
He took that game over. Probably they lose that game if not for him, Pierre, because BC came back there. I mean, if you get those 2 goals. So
well, the BC turnovers, Coach Brown's not going to be happy with the 2 turnovers that led to goals. And listen, we're not going to pick on young players. That's why they're playing college hockey. They're not ready to play in the NHL, so they make mistakes. Goals happen in the NHL because guys make mistakes too. But I think when you look at Drew Fortescue that was drafted by the New York Rangers, a young kid playing Division I college hockey, stuff happens.
Yep.
He won't do that again. Like he's going to be a good player going down the road. But the one thing that I would say is watching those 2 Beanpot games last night, and there are a lot of good players on all the teams. Celebrini was somebody to celebrate.
Yes. Boom. I love it.
Jimmy, this guy's really good. I've seen a lot of really good players at that age. This guy's in the same breath.
Like Jeffrey B says, look at that one-timer. That's NHL quality. That was a beauty.
Jeffrey B is spot on. And I went to, and I told you, I went to go scout him, a Northeastern BU game right after the World Junior. And usually that's a tough game for guys to play. He scored a goal. He was not an A-level player that night, but his one-timer, the left shot on the right side, that was big time. I was sitting right on the shooting line. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
He ripped that. He knew exactly where that puck was going, and he ripped it. And the same as last night.
I love it. He's just getting started. All right. Well, thank you to Mark Spector of Sportsnet for joining us. It was a great time. And to all our viewers and listeners in the comments section there, and, of course, to our production crew out in Vegas right now for Super Bowl weekend or week. And thanks to you, Pierre. And I am Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.